Incarcerated women, it's a growing population North Carolina did not prepare for.
With the correction system short on money, what's being done to help female offenders become productive members of communities once released? Tonight, we're digging deeper into the problem and how one woman is using her story to help others. June 30th, 1995, Christine Bunch's life changed forever.
I woke up and discovered my home was on fire. And I tried to get into my son's bedroom, and there was fire in the doorway.
She tried to put the fire out herself with a pillow and blanket, but the fire was too intense.
I ran out the front door screaming for help, and I took his tricycle and I busted out his bedroom window, and I tried to climb in and get him.
When firefighters arrived, they helped Christine into an ambulance to wait for the news of her son, Tony.
I want to be in the same room as Tony. I want to stay with him until he gets better. And so my dad was the person that had to tell me that Tony was dead.
No sooner than she heard the news, investigators told Bunch something she never expected.
They had determined that it was arson. It couldn't have been anything but.
And they thought that it was you?
Yes.
And her nightmare began. In 1996, a judge sentenced her to 60 years in prison for murder and 50 years for arson. A fabricated report from the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco Firearms helped convict Bunch. It took 17 years, but the truth finally came out. Finally, Bunch was exonerated and released from prison. And even though she never committed a crime, she understands the prison system and how it's working against women behind bars. After all, she experienced it for 17 years. So now Bunch has helped start the nonprofit Just Is for Just Us. They help exonerees transition back into society and offer resources women may not be afforded when released.
The only support I had was from my family and my legal team. There was nothing else. I wasn't eligible for re-entry.
According to the Innocence Project, the growth rate of women incarcerated is growing faster than for men. It goes back to the war on drugs, when the criminal justice system began cracking down on drug offenses, but not in the traditional sense. The war on drugs targeted blacks, Hispanics, and low-income white men.
Those males often have female counterparts, and left to fend for themselves, what ends up happening is they get involved in the same sort of trade.
It's a problem the criminal justice system didn't prepare for. The North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women has seen an increase in women offenders. In 2015, the offender population was 1,583. In 2019, it was 1,626. It did drop in 2020, partly because of COVID-19. Dr. Asfari admits it will take a lot to help women behind bars because most jails and prisons are underfunded in its programming.
They're experiencing all of this trauma outside. They go into these institutions and they're further traumatized. So it's not very rehabilitative in its nature, nor are we prepared, and these programs are entirely absent.
In fact, because jails are used for short-term stay, they do not offer programs such as rehabilitation, which is typically offered in prisons. Also, North Carolina only has one state prison for women, which poses its own problems.
You're oftentimes incarcerated away from your support structure because it's only one institution in the state, right? So that has implications also for their children down the line.
Now, there is no quick fix to help incarcerated women, but Dr. Asfari acknowledges more needs to be done. He believes the criminal justice reform should take into account the unique difficulties incarcerated women face. Because if this trend does continue, women could eventually catch up to men and the total number of people incarcerated overall.
What an incredible story. What an incredible story that woman has to tell, too, and that she's taking that situation and turning it into something good.
Hopefully, when we do reform the system, women will be taken into consideration in the future. Wes?